I overheard this woman the other day in the grocery store. Just a small little sliver of her conversation with somebody else. It sounded like she had run into him and they were talking, and all I heard from her was, he looks like the Shaggy DA. And that's all I heard. I just moved on. I did see a little bit of her, and it looked like she was looking at the guy's phone. So I've been trying to figure out ever since, like, I guess maybe she was looking at a picture of the guy's dog or on his phone. But it stuck with me, the Shaggy DA. Where do I know that from? I've heard that before. What do they call that when you're just out there in the world and you just hear these little tiny slivers of conversation that pass your ear and no context whatsoever? It's almost like just an actual, like, real life version of something like TikTok. Like, TikTok often feels like that. I also remember that app. Periscope. I think it was owned by Twitter years ago. And the whole idea of, Periscope is that you could just, you had like this map of the world, and there were all these little dots on it. You could just click on the dots anywhere in the world, and you would literally just drop in on somebody live streaming. Like, maybe they were at a party, maybe they were walking across the London Bridge. Maybe they were on like a yacht or something in the middle of the ocean. And it would feel like you're just dropping into the middle of somebody's conversation, like teleporting. But, a periscope, right? That's the whole idea of it. Like, like you're on a submarine, and like in, the old Batman movie with Adam West, where all the criminals, like the Joker and the Penguin, they were on a submarine, and they would just put the periscope up to kind of look at what was up there. And you could just, like, I guess, like, just kind of peer into people's lives. Very voyeuristic. It's probably a wonder why Periscope is closed down. I think they just realized it wasn't... People really didn't want to do that kind of thing. I don't know. But yeah, TikTok is like that too, where it's like you open that app up, and also YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels, and you're just scrolling and just dropping into these little short pieces of content without any real context for what's going on, and you have to sort of piece it together. It's like a game or something. But yeah, you do that out in the real world all the time. And in fact, on this podcast quite a bit, and a lot of people who do a podcast like mine and podcasts that I have, seek to have been inspired by over the years. And indeed, like, we'll be walking around the street, and they'll just be picking up these little pieces of conversation. And what do you call that when you just like drop in and just hear somebody out in the real world just talking? I know it's like a negative thing. You can call it eavesdropping. That sounds very negative. Or you can call it looming, which also sounds negative, and also like it doesn't really represent what I'm talking about, because that means that you hear somebody's conversation, and then you're just sort of looming around them to hear the rest of it, to piece together that context. But in this case, I was just walking through the grocery store, minding my own business. I heard this woman talking about the Shaggy DA, and I just kept on going because I had to go get like soup and dog food and coffee. But nevertheless, it stuck with me, the Shaggy DA. It didn't really immediately click in my head what it was, but I had heard that before, and it was just something that I had not heard about in years, and I had to be like, what is the Shaggy DA? What is the Shaggy DA, right? And so, yeah, I got my coffee, and I got my soup, and I got my dog food, and some other things. And I was in the car on the way home, and I was like, oh my God. Yeah, the Shaggy DA. Yeah, this was a Disney movie, wasn't it? A Disney movie with that guy. Who's that guy who used to be in all those Disney movies? He was like in Herbie, but you'd also see him like in movies in the 90s popping up. is like a familiar, he was like in one of those Harrison Ford movies where he played Jack Ryan or whatever. Who is that guy? Yeah, Dean Jones. Oh my God, Dean Jones. I haven't thought about that guy in years, right? And so I'm driving home there, just suddenly remembering this thing that I haven't thought about. Like, when's the last time I saw the Shaggy DA? God, man, I was like 4 or 5 years old, maybe. I just remember it was one of these movies that was always on television. And beyond that, I had no idea what it was about, except for the fact that I believe it was about a man who turned into a shaggy dog. And I used to get confused because there was another movie at the time, keep in mind I was like 4, called The Shaggy Dog. And so this must have been like the first time I kind of understood the concept of sequels. You know, that they make a movie and then it comes out and then they make another movie that's like has the same characters in it, getting into different adventures. It may have very well been the first time I understood the idea of sequels or like cinematic universes. Like, was there a Shaggy Dog cinematic universe? I don't know. I believe, and I was thinking that there was a Shaggy Dog remake many years ago, but yeah, no, I was thinking of the Shaggy DA, which was a sequel to the Shaggy Dog, and both movies were about a man who got turned into a dog, and beyond that, I don't know. Now, of course I didn't know when I was 4 years old what a DA is. I'm still not really sure I know what a DA is. I know what it stands for, right? District Attorney. So he was a shaggy dog. He was a shaggy district attorney, right? So I guess he was like a guy, like the district attorney is, he works for the state or the city, I guess the district, whatever, right? He's employed by the people. I remember I worked with somebody, a fellow teacher of mine one time. She was married to a DA or a guy who worked in the district attorney's office, I believe. And, yeah, these are the people who, like, if somebody is charged with a crime, they're the ones who have to go in and prove to the people that the guy did the crime. And then the person who did the crime or is convicted of the crime or alleged to have committed the crime gets their own defense. And so it's like a district attorney defense counsel showdown, right? So there's these movies that Disney made where like they take that idea of a guy who is prosecuting criminals and they turn him into a dog, a shaggy dog. And so this was a premise that sustained 2 movies. And I remember not really liking those movies very well. Like, it was sort of one of those things. Maybe I would remember the Shaggy DA and the Shaggy Dog a little bit better if I liked them as children. There were a lot of movies I liked as children that I could still tell you a lot about to this day, even though I haven't seen them in many, many years, like the Robin Hood, the Disney animated Robin Hood with all the Roger Miller music, and the, where he's a fox and there's a snake in it. I can tell you about that movie quite a bit. Tell you about movies like, I was born in 1982, so obviously Home Alone was a big deal. The 1989 Batman, I was disappointed when I saw it that it didn't have the criminals all hanging out on a submarine, but I can tell you a lot about that, right? But the Shaggy DA, the Shaggy Dog, no, because I did not like those movies. I just like, when they would come on television and, my mom or my nanny, I had like a woman who would come around in the summer times while my parents were at work, and she would take my sister and me to like McDonald's, and then she would bring us home and probably put on like these old videotapes that were coming out at the time, released through the Disney library, that would be in these big clamshell plastic boxes with really sharp edges. And so these were probably the movies she showed us. So I'm like, oh my God, this again. So I would go away as soon as the Shaggy Dog came on. Right. But I would see certain parts. And I remember being like moderately amused probably at him changing into the Shaggy Dog, because they did, probably, I'm assuming, like this was the 60s. I don't know if this was before or after Walt Disney died. I'm going to have to assume it was probably after, because I don't know if, they had like a string of movies after Walt Disney passed away in, what was it, 1966, that were just like ill-fated family, lowbrow kind of entertainment, not in the keeping of like the standard that Walt Disney, I guess, had demanded of his company, of his people. You know, these were movies like Super Dad with Bob Crane. Remember that movie? And I was probably moderately amused at him turning into the Shaggy DA, but other than that, I would kind of leave. They were just sort of boring movies, you know, That Darn Cat, all that. But yeah, beyond knowing a few basic facts, things that I can remember, I really don't know anything else about that movie. And I came very close tonight when I was thinking about talking about this on my show. I didn't think I was going to open the show with it because it's like really not very amusing, I guess, when you think about it. But just trying to remember this movie from years ago and not having any information about it. But I decided not to look up anything about it, not to inform you about anything other than the fact that I had just heard a woman reference that movie, because that's sort of the idea, is that I've gotten to this point. I'm sick and tired of farming out my memory to my phone. Sometimes I want to keep things a mystery a little bit. I want to have this idea in my head that exists just as an idea and not add knowledge onto it. Does that make any sense? That's kind of what I want to do with the Shaggy DA. I want to piece it together. This guy who is a dog. Did he get bitten by a dog? Like, how did he get this magical, like maybe like a witch cursed him? There was a lot of witch curses in the movies of my youth, I believe. Somebody would get cursed by a witch or like a voodoo priestess, and it would affect their lives and stuff like that. I don't know. Yeah, like that movie Freaky Friday, remember? Where Jodie Foster and her mom traded places. They did a remake of that too, didn't they? Yeah. Yeah, did he get bitten? I don't know. Like, what was this movie about? The Shaggy dog. He would, I guess, like, kind of wake up in the morning and see his family and then go to work. And I guess maybe he was like in the middle of a big meeting or like a big trial or something like that. And suddenly like this itch would get him. And they would do that, Lon Chaney Wolfman transition where he would slowly grow hair on his cheeks and on his arms. And then they would cut to some reaction shots of like the jury and, a couple of those Disney actors that were always in the Disney movies of the time. And then they would cut back and it would just be like a little dog with maybe like a tie on, I think, or something. And he would like run out of the room in shame and embarrassment or something. Or maybe, I don't know. I don't think he would go about doing his job. Like, you're rough. I'd like to call Jon Stewart to the stand. This is Jon Stewart. I don't know. Yeah. So was he a district attorney in the first movie, or was he just a guy who became a Shaggy dog? I don't know. Then the sequel picks up a few years later. He goes to law school. He gets elected by the people to be the district attorney. And everything's going really well. And then suddenly, like, there's that damn dog again coming back into my life. Fucking things up. I don't know. I do know the Shaggy dog origin story, like what the Shaggy dog actually means, not like in the movie, like how he becomes the Shaggy dog, but yeah, the Shaggy dog is like an old, I guess, comedy concept, perhaps. I don't know when it goes back to. I don't want to know this either. I don't want to really look it up. I kind of do. I may. I don't know. But yeah, this is related to like a story that somebody tells that goes on and on and on, and it just meanders and has all these just different diversions and tangents, and ultimately doesn't lead up to anything. That's called a Shaggy dog story. And by way of saying that, speaking of long and pointless and meandering and tangents and divergence, this is the Midnight Citizen Show. Welcome in tonight. I'm your host, Mike Booty. I think I actually did talk about the Shaggy dog story many years ago. I don't know. But I just typed in Shaggy dog story into Google. And yeah, of course, Amazon's trying to sell me the Shaggy dog. But this is the remake, it looks like, with Tim Allen, the guy from Home Improvement. Yeah, and there he is. He's like wearing a suit, and he's got a briefcase, and there's a dog right next to him. So, but yeah, the Shaggy dog story. This is from Wikipedia here. Says it's a yarn that is an extremely long-winded anecdote characterized by extensive narration of typically irrelevant incidents and terminated by an anticlimax. So it's, in other words, a long story that's intended to be amusing and that has an intentionally silly or meaningless endings. Shaggy dog stories play upon the audience's preconceptions of joke telling. So yeah, the idea that like somebody approaches you and they tell you they're going to tell a joke, or they have all of the framing devices of a joke, like a setup. It sounds like they're going to a punchline, and the whole idea is just to bait and switch you, right? To get you. It's like essentially it's like going to one of those meetings where they tell you like, you're here for all these gifts and perks, but, before we give you those things, we're going to try and just do a stupid pitch to try and sell you a timeshare, right? And then 12 hours later, you walk out feeling completely numbed and indoctrinated into buying a timeshare, I suppose. I guess they're designed to wear you down in a way, to string you along, I suppose. And yeah, the Shaggy dog story has been studied by academics and scholars. It says here, humanities scholar Jane Marie Todd observed that the Shaggy dog story demonstrates the nature of desiring humor and how that process occurs. Just kind of interesting. The idea that like, even when we are getting to that point in somebody telling us the Shaggy dog story, we're still there. We're still hanging on as a way of knowing that this is going to pay off in a really good and satisfying way. And it never does. And yeah, it reminds me of that story, that, you probably, if you were a kid, you probably had, this happen to you where like a friend of yours told you this big, long story and that was framed as a joke that, talked about this kid crossing the street. Once he crosses the street, he gets into all these like crazy misadventures, like somebody steals his money that his dad gave him to buy candy, and he tries to chase after that money, but he gets hit by a car. He goes to the emergency room. When he's in the emergency room, blah, 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 blah. And then finally, like 5 minutes later, as long as the kid can keep it up, he says, moral of the story, don't cross the street. So yeah, that was that's what that reminded me of. And yeah, what I remember, and this is probably when I talked about this on, so I may be repeating myself, I'm not sure. But what I do remember is that the comedian Norm Macdonald, who, you know, I've talked about Norm Macdonald on the show in the past, and I'm a big fan. I know he rubs a lot of people the wrong way. Just in terms of like his Shaggy Dog stories. He's very much, I suppose, in the vein of like a meta comedian. His humor comes from the fact that he is very aware of himself as a joke teller. He's very self-conscious of himself as somebody who is being paid to tell you jokes. And so he comes across as just almost like annoyed that he has to be doing this, that he has to be telling you the joke, and he having also like no confidence in like his ability to really tell the joke, and so sort of after that explaining the joke. And I know that rubs like a lot of people the wrong way about Norm Macdonald. I've had a lot of conversations with people over the years, but I have fortunately allowed myself, I've worked myself into a position in life where almost everybody that I know and I'm friends with you know, likes Norm Macdonald. So so if you're not one of those people, I don't know, maybe at this point, I don't know, what is this, episode 282 with the Midnight Citizen show? Maybe at this point, if you're still listening to my show, you may also enjoy Norm Macdonald, right? But he was famous for, the Shaggy Dog story. And there's like a whole playlist here of Norm Macdonald's Shaggy Dog stories. Let me pick out a good one. I'll play a good one. Yeah, so there's one called Turtle in a Shoebox. Turtle in a Shoebox. He would always do David Letterman on Saturday Night Live. So yeah, let's see this. I'm going to let that ad play while my mixer's turned down. But yeah, this is him on Conan O'Brien. It's a great talk show guest. Always great talk show guest.
Everybody, here with Norm Macdonald, and you know, I find out more and more about you every time you come on the program. You know, I always study up on a file and I learn more about you, and I was really surprised to learn I didn't know this. I didn't know this, but you were a bartender.
Yeah, I did a lot of jobs before I got into comedy, you know, and for a while I was slinging the hash. No.
You idiot!
That was when I was a fry cook. I was a bartender. I was slinging the drinks, you know?
Sure, right.
And, oh, man, that was fun. I'll tell you what was fun about being a bartender. Always a story, you know?
Really?
Always something funny happening down at the bar.
And, that's perfect for a talk show, then.
Yeah, this is a good example. I was, one time I was working in there. Drunk guy comes in, you know? And you're not supposed to serve the drunk guys. You know, that's one of the things you learn. So,
okay.
And also you learn how to make the drinks.
Yeah.
But, so the drunk guy comes in, you know, real drunk, you know, 3 sheets to the wind, you know. So this character sits down, you know, and I says to him, I says, what do you want? I can't serve you, you know. He goes, I don't want a drink, he says, you know. He says, I want to shoot a dart at your dartboard, you know. So I go to the guy, so you can't shoot a dart at my dartboard. He goes, you're not in this, you're drunk, you know. I said, I'm not going to let you, that'd be dangerous. That's a sharp thing, a dart, you know. So the guy goes, no, let me shoot 1 shot at the dartboard. So I go, all right, 1 shot, that's it. So the guy shoots the dart, bullseye. I never seen anything like it, you know, even in his state, bullseye. So the guy says to me, he says, what do I win? You know? So I don't know what he wins. I'm confused, you know, so I start looking around, try to find something before him, and I see right in the bottom of the bar area, there's a shoebox with a turtle in it.
From where? What is that doing there?
What? I was gonna give it as a gift to my nephew.
Okay, all right.
He wanted a turtle, and I said, I'll get him a turtle. That'll be a good gift.
Okay.
But then later I thought, that's a dumb gift, a turtle. Nobody likes a turtle, you know? The kid will probably just put him on his back until he dies. Kids are cruel, you know? So I said, why not just give it to this drunk?
Okay.
You know?
Okay.
So I said, here's your prize. Here it is. And so the guy takes it in the shoebox, you know, and he goes, thanks, and he walks out with it. So I figured that's the last I'll ever see of that guy.
Sure.
2 weeks later, the guy shows up again, drunk again. So now I go, oh my God, that's that guy from 2 weeks ago, you know? So he walks up to the bar. I go, I can't serve you, buddy. I can't do that. He goes, I don't. He says, I want to shoot a dart at your dartboard. I go, no, man, I let you do that before. He goes, but I got a bullseye. I say, yeah, but you can't do that again. You know, it was luck. He goes, let me try. So he takes it, shoots it, bullseye again.
Oh, man.
So he goes, what do I win? You know? So I'm confused. I don't know, you know? I look around. I go, I don't know. I go, what did you win last time? He goes, last time I won a roast beef on a hard roll. It was the turtle.
We know it was the turtle. It was the turtle. We know.
Oh, my God.
It was the turtle.
Guy must have gone out and ate it. It was crazy.
Oh, he ate the turtle. I see now.
It was crazy.
That's the real end of the joke.
It wasn't a joke.
I know it really happened.
So that was the Shaggy Dog story. And, you know, you heard it there. It just is one of those things where the joke is just really it's almost like a the classic, you know, comic premise of the straight man. And it takes two people to make the Shaggy Dog joke work. And really the joke is not so much over time the person telling the joke, it's the person listening to the joke getting, as you heard Conan O'Brien just do, increasingly like beginning to get the fact that this is a Shaggy Dog story, laughing at all the different divergences and tangents that the joke teller makes, and then getting kind of exhausted. Like you heard Conan sort of after the turtle and the shoebox part sort of like be worn down a little bit, and then come back alive again with the roast beef on a hard roll. Right. So it's almost like just a comedy routine, I guess, with two people, Abbott and Costello, whatever you want to call it. The Shaggy Dog story, I guess, is not meant to be confused with the rake gag, although I think that they're kind of similar. Right. The rake gag is, I want to make sure I say rake gag. OK, because if I say it really fast, it sounds like something else. I don't want to say that. But yeah, this is the idea of like somebody stepping on a rake one time and hitting themselves in the face is funny. The second time it's sort of amusing. The third time it's like, okay, let's go do something else and stop laughing at you know, hitting your face with the rake. But they keep doing it again. They do it a fourth time and a fifth time. By the ninth time, it kind of starts to become funny. The idea, I suppose, this guy keeps doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results or whatever, but he's hitting himself over and over with the rake. Ninth time, 10th time, 11th time, it becomes unbearably hilarious. You're like falling down on the grass and you're peeing your pants at this guy. And then you gain your composure a little bit. You kind of start to get up, but you find that the guy's still doing it. He's still stepping on that rake. He keeps hitting himself in the nose. Ow, ow, ow. Right. And then it starts to wear down a little bit, but he's still freaking doing it. Right. So it cycles through, and eventually your realities will kind of synchronize a little bit, as we like to talk about on a show like this, that I am indeed recording this at a certain time and you're hearing it later on in the future. But you know, the joke teller's reality of like exactly what they're doing synchronizes with the person who is being goofed on. And they eventually begin to realize at the same time, okay, this has maybe gone on long enough. Let's do something else with our time. Let's go, I don't know. Let's go rob a liquor store or whatever. Let's go get sushi and not pay. So anyway, yeah, this is the, as I said, yeah, I counted, this is the 282nd episode of the Midnight Citizen Show, and we're 30 minutes in now. See, this is the fun you can do when you don't farm your memory out to your phone, when you just sort of remember everything for yourself, just fill in the blanks the best you can. And it'll lead to some tangents, right? Most assuredly, if you weren't here right now, I would be going on a YouTube rabbit hole, watching other Norm Macdonald Shaggy dog stories, and probably watching the Shaggy dog. I could easily watch a clip on YouTube and remind myself exactly what the Shaggy dog does and what the Shaggy dog DA is about, but I'm not going to do that. So yeah. I did have this realization the other day that on this show, I'm approaching 300 episodes, which is, would you call that? I guess that's a milestone. I don't know. Right. I've been doing this show since 2010 pretty consistently. Although, yeah, of course, like I don't do one every single week. I would like to do one every week. Right now I have no plans to stop, but it feels like every time I say that, the next week I stop. So I'm not going to do it. I enjoy doing the show. But yeah, and I did take those 3 years off, right? When I got my teaching job, teaching high school, I didn't do a show between 2017 and 2020. I finally started doing shows again. When I was in this room, I was in the Midnight Citizen studio, my office, during COVID, teaching high school, and I had to, I broke out all my recording equipment again. I just started doing shows again. I've been doing it pretty consistently, like on and off ever since 2020. Right, is what we call it. And the point is that of all this is that I am edging toward, as I edge toward 300 episodes, and 15 full years of doing this. I am thinking about rebranding, which I hate using that term so much. I hate the term brand. But I do, nevertheless, I have to live with it. I do have a brand, right? And it is called the Midnight Citizen. And when I started doing the show in 2010, I was 15 years younger than I am now, right? So I was like just past my mid-20s, I suppose. And having a different idea of what this show was going to be when I came up with that name, the Midnight Citizen. And I had this, I remember when I came up with that name, I came up with the name, the Midnight Citizen, in a Spirit of Halloween store in October of 2009. And I was in there. I remember I had just been in like this fender bender, on University Boulevard, right down the street here. And, there had been this girl who was about my age who had, just run a red light, and she had just very lightly tapped me. Like, it was her fault, but nevertheless, I got out and the police came by and we did like a police report, and I ended up not filing charges on her or anything like that. I mean, it wasn't that bad, but also it would have been awkward because I asked her out at the when we were standing there on the curb, waiting for the cops to show up. I don't think I would have done that today. Well, it's like, one, I'm married, so that would be bad form. But I also just like, this is a girl who just hit me, and she's probably feeling pretty bad about herself right now. And I think maybe at the time I saw it as a way of cheering her up to like ask her out or something. But it was really for me, I think, at the time. I don't think I would have done that now. But I just remember that I got this girl's number, and a police report with her name on it. So, my point is that I've grown up, okay, over 15 years. And, when I was standing in the Spirit of Halloween store, she had called me, actually. She called me on my cell phone and we were talking and all that. And, I hung up the phone with her, and, I just remember looking at this, CD collection there, that was on the desk. Of the Spirit of Halloween store right there next to the cash register. And it was a CD of like, I don't know, spooky music, Halloween music or whatever, like the Monster Mash and all the other greatest hits of Halloween. And, I remember looking on that CD case and just looking below at the company that distributed it. And it said the Midnight Syndicate. And I was like, oh, fuck, that's a great name for a podcast. The Midnight Syndicate. Oh man, that's great. Right. So I looked really closer at that. And, then I started to get mad, right? As you do typically when you see a great idea that should be yours that somebody else has already thought of. And so as I'm driving home that day, in my car, listening to that CD that I bought, I was thinking to myself, like, what I love Thee and I love Midnight. But God, I love Syndicate so much. So I guess I'll have to change that name. So I chose the Midnight Citizen, right? It would have been great because Syndicate, it's like I'm syndicating an RSS feed. I'm, making things, a night radio show, and I'm sending it out. I'm syndicating it. Oh, it would have been so good. But, whatever. The Midnight Citizen. And I got home, of course, as you do, and you got on the computer and I Googled Midnight Citizen. Does anybody else have this name? And there was like a band in like Belgium or something like that had that was using the name The Midnight Citizen. And they had a Facebook page and all that stuff. And I'm like, yeah, band in Belgium, whatever. The Midnight Citizen. Okay, it's fine. I'll use it. I started calling myself the Midnight Citizen. And a couple months later, I did my first show, called it the Midnight Citizen. And, the rest, as they say, is history, I suppose. But, over the years, the show has become, something a little bit different. I initially imagined it as me playing like a character. The first see, this is deep history on the show here that I don't think I've ever gone into at all. But the first episode that I did ever, which you unfortunately cannot find now, I lost it when I moved into this apartment that I'm currently living in now. It was on another computer, and I gave that computer away to my sister, and never, she wiped the hard drive, so I don't have it anymore. So I'm sorry about that. But the first episode of the show ever, I was playing a character. I was envisioning the idea that this was somebody who was on a late night talk show in a small radio station in the middle of nowhere. And, this is before Welcome to Night Vale, that podcast that came out and just suddenly got everybody saying to each other, have you ever heard of a podcast? Right. And, but that's what Welcome to Night Vale was. And I'm not saying that, they stole my idea. They most definitely did not. But it was very much like that idea. It was like I was playing the role of like a guy who was like at a late night radio station in the country, and he's doing a late night show. And the Midnight Citizen. And so I was playing a part, so my voice was deeper, and I was doing much more of like what I'm sure now. I'm glad that you can't hear the show because I'm sure it's very cringy. But what am I saying? I've done a lot of shows since then that are very cringy, but including possibly this one. I don't know. So over the years, I started to do the show more. It began to become something that was a lot more sincere, I feel. Something that was like where I ultimately really wasn't playing a role. I certainly have a bit more of a heightened personality and a heightened sense of wanting to talk here more than I do in normal life, I think. But it was just one of those things where I just got older. I grew up. I matured a little bit. And I began to become a little bit embarrassed by the term the Midnight Citizen. And I've been that way for a very long time. I kind of hesitate to tell people, even though one of the aims of the show is to get people to listen to my show. When when I'm talking to people in the real world, IRL, right? And I'm, tell them that I have a podcast. They're always like, what's your podcast called? And I'm like, it's the Midnight Citizen Show. Like, what, the Midnight Syndicate? And I was like, no, that would have been cool, but the Midnight Citizen Show. And so they look at me, and I'm just like this, diminutive, I suppose, guy, and who doesn't look at all like brooding. And I think they feel like that term is very brooding because that's what I created the show to be. I created it to be a sort of show of brooding rumination. And it just hasn't become that at all. It's I do most shows at night. That's true, but and right now it is midnight here. But in terms of like the show name representing me and who I am, it doesn't match. So all that is to say, I am thinking as I approach episode 300 of doing what I have been wanting to do for many, many years, which is to change the name of the show, which I can do. I don't think I have to go down to the courthouse or anything like that to do that. It may cause some problems with like some confusion among the audience, but I think I can change all the handles and everything. So here's what I'm asking for you, and then we'll move on and we won't talk about this anymore. Okay. So this is episode 282. So I've got now 17 more shows to go before episode 300. When I hit episode 300, I'm thinking very strongly of turning it over and renaming the show. I don't know what that name is going to be yet. I've had some ideas, but I don't want to put them out there. So if you're listening right now, it would be fantastic if you could tell me thumbs up or thumbs down. Should I change the name of the Midnight Citizen show? Right? Is it a show? Is it a name that you sort of like, just be honest with me, like cringe when you kind of hear it, right? Is it a show that just like doesn't sound relevant to the actual show that I'm actually doing? So I want you to tell me. I'm putting it in the hands of the audience. Those of you who do listen, and you know, the silent majority are out there. I'm gonna adopt that name from Nixon, right? Because I do look at like streaming. I do look at numbers from time to time, and this week I was looking on my Substack, and I do see that people are downloading the show, and I do see that people are actually listening to the thing all the way through. But I only really hear from like a very small, minuscule handful of you. The rest of you are the silent majority. You know, you're like my, what Pat Buchanan in the early 90s, that far right Republican candidate would call the Mars, right? The Middle American radicals. Those people in Middle America who were like really angry at the direction that their country was going in. I'm not calling you those people, but they are nevertheless the silent majority. You know, the people who would grow up to listen to Alex Jones and all that. But that's not you. I'm just, maybe that's a bad comparison. So anyway, so yeah, if you think you should, if you think I should change my name from the Midnight Citizen to something else, just let me know. In the comments over at youtube.com/the_Midnight Citizen podcast. Oh man, I just ran out of breath a little bit there saying that. See, like a name change would change that. I'm just saying. Or you can go to the Substack at mikesbonfire.substack.com. See, I already have a name change over there. Mike's Bonfire, which I'm only created 2 years ago and I'm pretty cringy about. Sounds like just like really pervy, doesn't it? Like, come sit by Mike's Bonfire. I'll tell you a Shaggy dog story or two. Yeah, so... Oh gosh, I need to get some whiskey for this part. All right, listen to some music. I'll be back with some whiskey. Hang on just a second. All right, so... Yeah, I had in my notes here coming up next. Just found out not 2 hours ago via a text from my friend Jason that George Foreman has died. George Foreman has died, and George Foreman was not a relevant celebrity for what he was a celebrity for when I was growing up in the early 90s. George Foreman was different things to me than what he was to my dad and people who grew up in the, I suppose, the 1960s. He was a world heavyweight champion, I believe, right? And was that the Rumble in the Jungle? I don't know. There was a famous fight, right? Between him, was it Muhammad Ali? See, I don't know boxing. But yeah, he is dead today at 76 years old. So here it is from CBS Sports. Let me show this to you. By the way, tonight I am recording video of the show, and you can watch it over at the YouTube. But yeah, George Foreman dies at 76. So look at the Legends 5 most memorable fights from Joe Frazier to Muhammad Ali. So the title of the baddest man on the planet has been bestowed on many a heavyweight champion in boxing history. At his peak, it was hard to argue that George Foreman did anything but live up to that moniker as a heavy-handed wrecking ball. See, that's what I thought, is that, like, when I found out that George Foreman, this really friendly, kind of lovable person, television personality, was like this badass boxer. It really sort of threw me off, right? Because it just didn't seem like he would. I mean, it looked like he could definitely punch you if he wanted to, but like why would he do that? He's like so nice. You would never ever think that. Like, you know, you look at some boxers, like, you know, you look at Muhammad Ali, right? And you look at Mike Tyson, and yeah, you look at who's the people today, like Conor McGregor, right? Like, yeah, these people would want to punch me. Like, any off-putting comment I would say to them, they would punch me. But George Foreman was not that, not that guy, right? But yeah, he was an Olympic gold medal in boxing. And yeah, the iconic 1971 fight of the century, in which I guess he beat Muhammad Ali. Was there one that was there a fight? There was an episode of Mad Men where I believe Don Draper and Peggy are in a bar and they're watching this fight. I think it's him and Joe Frazier. Where he knocked Joe Frazier out in like the first round, I believe. Yeah, Frazier was frequently rattled and was dropped 3 times in the first round and 3 more times in the second. Okay, the second, before the fight was stopped at 2:26, mark of the round. That was the fight that Howard Cosell legendarily calls Down Goes Frazier, Down Goes Frazier. Yeah, Howard Cosell, right? He was, I know that name. Like, I remember seeing Howard Cosell like on television sporting events when I was a little kid, probably around the time I was watching the Shaggy Dog. And he was, you know, he was this old guy that they would always bring out for, you know, he was like just a legend in sports broadcasting. All right, so let's see if we can find like one of these famous fights for George Foreman while I pour myself a little bit of whiskey. I'm going to look up the Joe Frazier fight because that's the one that I know will have Howard Cosell, right? Yeah. Okay, so here it is in 4K. Keep in mind, again, I am recording this on video so you can watch it. And we'll skip past the ad a little bit. And may not watch this whole thing. I just want to see a little bit of it. I've never seen any of... I don't watch boxing, and I don't watch boxing history, but unless it's in some kind of a documentary or whatever.
There's no fear in either man. There is no fear in George Foreman.
There he is. There's Howard
He's
Cosell.
grown enormously in his confidence of speech.
How could people take that voice seriously? They couldn't. They were always making fun of it and parodying it. And it was like in, cartoons were parodying it, Howard Cosell.
They have an interesting evening. Frazier, quite understandably, the favorite. Foreman comes out punching with the right. Frazier in his usual style. Smoking is the way he puts it. His job to get inside. His best weapon, the left hook. Foreman is vulnerable to the hook. Oh, the crowd was misled when Joe fell back a little. There was a slip off balance. Historically, Frazier has not been a good first-round fighter, but historically he has been a tremendous, tremendous fighter. A great champion. You saw the left hook. Foreman would like to keep punching and keep Frazier away from him with his punches. Joe's job to get inside. Steadily use that left hook. Whip. Oh, Foreman connected, as you saw. He's a big, strong boy. He likens this fight to the same kind of problem he faced. There's another left by George. He's getting into Frazier's head.
All right, so here they go. I'm always amazed at sportscasters. I know I'm supposed to be talking about George Foreman. I'm talking more about Howard Cosell here, but I'm always amazed so much at how sportscasters can just fill time. Like if a game is boring or a match is boring or something like that, and there's not really a whole lot talking, they can always just summon facts and statistics. And I know like in the modern day, they've got... Oh, there it is.
Down goes Frazier. He is as poised as can be. We have a minute left in this first round. And already this fight is proving out what some have expected. Underneath, Archie Moore is yelling the Foreman.
Yeah, see, like now I'm doing it. I'm doing the same thing as Howard Cosell, where I'm just kind of talking a little bit and, filling time and just talking about how again and again and again.
The same head that was hit so often by Muhammad Ali.
Same head that was hit so often.
You see the countdown for the first round.
Here's the countdown.
Has not panicked. Foreman is going about his job. Foreman is all over Joe Frazier. Frazier is down again.
Oh, man, there he goes. See, this looks nothing at all like the George Foreman that I grew up knowing. Now, the George Foreman I grew up knowing, all right, I'm getting out of this, is not the same George Foreman that you would think I would know him from in the 90s, okay? And, like last week, I was talking about... I was asking that question, when is the first time you remember hearing about something that you've always taken for granted that you know? And I was bringing this up in connection to Jack the Ripper. Because Jack the Ripper is one of those cases, those infamous serial killer cases that I just feel like I've always known about. I couldn't remember the first time, and I was really trying to reverse engineer my memory a little bit to try and figure out the first time that I may have heard about Jack the Ripper. But I think when it comes to George Foreman, I was old enough to really remember the first time I was aware of him, because he was on this television show, bringing it back to Disney, on the Disney Channel called Walt Disney World Inside Out. And so 1995, I would have been 13 years old about. And obviously not having the money, we were not one of those families who went to Disney World every single year. In 1995, I believe at that time I had been to Disney World twice. And as of today, I've been there 3 times. So I had just been in 1994. And for the first time in 89. So this was a big show that I love that would come on every weekend on the Disney Channel called Walt Disney World Inside Out. And George Foreman would host with like these 2 other people, I suppose. And they would just take you all around Disney World to show you all the new attractions. And George Foreman was on the show, and I had no idea who he was. And I think I probably asked my mom. It's like, yeah, I used to be a boxer, I think. She didn't really know that much about him either. No. Oh, that's a commercial. There he is. He's getting a snake put on him.
Inside Out, only on the Disney Channel. This is the toughest job I've ever had.
All right, so I guess he was doing a commercial there for Walt Disney World Inside Out. Here's a longer segment. This is about 2.5 minutes long, and it's Disney World Inside Out, the Astro Orbiter. I have no idea what that is. I guess that's in Tomorrowland, I'm assuming. I'm seeing clips of like Buzz Lightyear or whatever. There he is right there.
I've been flying through space, but I've still never experienced weightlessness. So today, I, George Foreman, and my fellow space cadets join the space age. What do you say? Yay! Of course, they don't just hand you the keys to a rocket. It takes years of practice and training before you fly in space. First, you've got to be in tip-top shape. Easy, bud. Easy. It's not enough to train your body. You also have to train your mind. Yeah! Finally, the big day arrives. We are official Disney World astronauts. What a feeling of pride.
So he graduated the Space Academy. I guess it wasn't even a ride. The Astro... Oh, I think it's like that thing, right, where you get on the rocket ships. Yeah, there it is. And you ride around on top of the thing next to Space Mountain. I don't know Disney World that much, I guess.
To infinity and beyond. Weightlessness, here I come. Now, if I recall from my flight training, I pull back to go up and push forward to go down.
Reach for the stars. Pull back hard in that handle. Enjoy your flight here in the Magic Kingdom.
Orlando Control, it appears Foreman is unable to achieve a proper altitude.
Disney, we have a problem.
George, we're going around the room on this. We're going to get you some answers. Just stand by.
Flight, I think we must...
That was 2 catchphrases, by the way, of 1995. To infinity and beyond from the movie Toy Story. And Houston, we have a problem from the movie Apollo 13. You couldn't go anywhere in 1995 without people saying those words to you.
I can! I got it! I got it! Everything is fine!
Cutting to mission control.
Yay! I got it! I got it! Yay!
It was very, very space age, right? But yeah, this is George Foreman, just the family-friendly television personality. And yeah, you got an idea of it there because the joke is always to take kind of some kind of big, strong, tough guy, like an athlete, and reduce him to not knowing anything, like looking like kind of an idiot, like the dopey dad, and all these kids are sort of beating him in training exercises and flying the Astro Orbiter better than he is, and he's just like an idiot. He doesn't know what he's doing, and that was always good for comedy there as a kid in 1995, right? But that's how I knew George Foreman, right? That was my first introduction to him there, not knowing who he was. He was a boxer. I couldn't believe it because, you know, when you're 13 years old, when you're 12 or 13 years old, you have a tendency to believe that nothing happened before you were born. And so you're looking at this guy, this like big, you know, jolly, smiling guy who's having a good time on the Astro Orbiter. And you're thinking that, right, like, I guess he just goes from the set to box. I don't know. I can't see him making that, making that transition, right? But yeah, of course, everybody knows him for becoming like a grill tycoon, right? He created or I guess he put his name on the George Foreman lean, mean, fat grilling machine. And so this was a tiny little grill, and there's a huge synchronicity associated with this, by the way, for me today. This was a tiny little grill that you would plug in. It was electric, and you would Didn't have to take it outside or anything. It wasn't that kind of grill. And you would, put it on your counter and just take like, I don't know, a steak or whatever. You would take anything that could be thrown on a grill and you would press it. You would press it down like a waffle iron. And it would press all the fat, all the little fatty juices into the tray, into the pan that you would then empty. And it was good, right? It's like everybody had a George Foreman lean, mean, fat grilling machine. And today, the day that George Foreman passed away, as I said, at the age of 76, my parents were at my grandmother's house because my grandmother has just been moved into a nursing home, and they were going through her apartment and kind of cleaning out a bunch of stuff, and they were sending text messages to me and my sisters, just all this stuff that my grandmother had. Like, do you want this? Do you have any use for this? And a bunch of pictures of Tupperware and like ironing boards and things like that. And one of the things that my mom sent to me was a picture. It's like, do you want the George Foreman grill? And I was like, oh my gosh. Now when I think about that, right? It's wild. Okay, so here is, it looks like this is from the 90s. This is George Foreman. He's always there. Oh, 2001. Excuse me. So he's there in a kitchen. This woman walks into a kitchen. She's just come from the grocery store with her son. And of course, she has like a paper bag with a giant baguette sticking out of it, like you do, to show that, you have groceries in there and you're not just pretending. And George Foreman is just standing in her kitchen. So...
Had a busy day? My lean, mean, fat-reducing grilling machine is great to come home to. It lets you prepare hot, delicious meals in just minutes. And once again, I've teamed up with Sears to make it even better.
The Sears exclusive extra-large George Foreman grill has a variable temperature control that lets you adjust for the perfect cooking temperature. Low for fish and vegetables, then high for thick, juicy steaks. So your food is seared to perfection on the outside, moist and tender on the inside. Food that's healthier, too, because its patented slanted design drains fat and grease into these trays and out of your diet. And with its variable temperature control, everything comes off just the way you like it. At $99.98, the George Foreman Extra Large Grill with temperature control is an exceptional value, and it's available only from Sears. Because it cooks from both sides, it's a real time saver. You can cook.
All right, that's nice. Get back to the George Foreman. He's got to be in here somewhere, right? Surely he's going to come back in at the end for like a little coda. George Foreman coda.
The double-coated nonstick surface makes cleanup a snap.
Oh my God!
My extra large grill with temperature control is only available from Sears, and it's a knockout.
Dinner's ready, George.
I'm so proud of it, I put my name on it. And because it's from Sears, you know your satisfaction is guaranteed or your money back. Hey, life can be hectic, but my extra large grilling machine with temperature control makes preparing delicious food quick and easy. Order yours today.
So there he was, like hawking his fat grilling machine that just became a major staple of 90s television life, as well as 90s and 2000s, and I guess even to today, apartment living, right? Did you catch that there, by the way? This is 2001, so this is many years after the grill was first introduced to the market. He's no longer calling it the fat grilling machine. He's calling it the fat reducing machine. So I'm assuming he probably got into a little bit of trouble with the I'm going to say Federal Trade Commission, being like, hey, it's a little misleading. You're not really getting rid of all the fat. And he's like, all right, I'll just call it reducing. It'll still be a knockout, right? He's always using those boxing puns. It'll be a knockout, right? I'm sure there's a commercial. I can't verify this because I don't want to go through all the commercials, but I'm sure there's probably a commercial where he says something to the degree of like, it'll be the heavyweight champion of your kitchen, right? That's probably, I'm assuming something that he did say in a commercial at one point, right? But the George Foreman lean, mean, fat reducing grilling machine. Yeah. And tonight, whenever you find out that, a celebrity dies, you immediately jog up a memory, like the very first thing that comes to mind. And it's maybe not always like the thing that maybe they want you to remember them for. I don't know. And George Foreman, I think, had a pretty squeaky clean, kind of lifestyle, but, he was, the first, this is in no way whatsoever a disparagement, I guess, a black spot on his legacy. But when I thought about it, I think it's because my wife she recently subscribed to Peacock. She got like a free subscription or something. So we've been watching old episodes of The Office. And the thing that my mind immediately went to, I think, because I just saw this episode the other day, maybe that's another synchronicity. I don't know. But, what is the statute of limitations for synchronicities? Like between something happening to you and then something happening to you that's related to that thing? I don't know. That's a question for another time, I suppose. But, I was thinking of the episode of The Office, right? Of course, where Michael Scott, the dopey boss on that show, grills his foot on one of those fat grilling machines. I don't know. What am I typing in? The Office. I'm just going to look this up. The Office. This is like a heavy YouTube night, isn't it? Yeah. Foreman Grill. Yeah. Very famous opening to this episode. This is a very early episode of The Office when it was really untouchable. It's just a great show. I know that show is like kind of off-putting to some people. Not everybody likes it. But I think you can categorically say this is a very funny episode. If you've never seen The Office, right? I don't know what to. I guess I can set this up. I feel like a guest on a talk show every time I have to introduce a YouTube clip, but yeah, like Michael Scott is like the dopey boss of The Office that nobody really likes, but they have to put up with him, of course, because he's in control of whether or not they have employment tomorrow. It's a very dark idea for these times, I suppose, but he's always he's an attention hound. He's always seeking attention because he doesn't have any friends in real life, and he's not married. He doesn't have kids, doesn't have a girlfriend. So he's always like the people in the office are all the people he has in his life, and he wants to impress them and all that. So this is an early episode of The Office, where Michael grills his foot.
Dunder Mifflin, this is Pam.
Pam, it's Michael. Help me. I need help right now.
Michael, what's wrong?
I'm hurt. I have hurt myself. Oh, my God.
Okay, wait.
This is not looking good, Pam.
Michael, do you need me to call an ambulance?
No, I want you to pick me up.
Okay, wait a sec. I thought you said that you were hurt.
I am hurt. I hurt my foot.
Pam.
I want to come to work, but I need you to come and pick me up.
No, God!
Hey, whoa, Michael.
Oh, God!
It's okay. It's Jim. Just say again really loudly what happened.
Okay, I burned my foot very badly on my Foreman grill, and I now need someone to come and bring me into work.
You burned your foot on a Foreman grill.
I enjoy having breakfast in bed. I like waking up to the smell of bacon. Sue me. And since I don't have a butler, I have to do it myself. So most nights before I go to bed, I will lay 6 strips of bacon out on my George Foreman grill. Then I go to sleep. When I wake up, I plug in the grill. I go back to sleep again. Then I wake up to the smell of crackling bacon. It is delicious. It's good for me. It's a perfect way to start the day. Today, I got up, I stepped onto the grill, and it clamped down on my foot. That's it. I don't see what's so hard to believe about that. Morning, everyone. Don't freak out. I forbid anybody to freak out. Clearly, I have had a very serious accident, but I will recover, God willing. I just want to be treated normally today. Normal would actually be good, considering the trauma that I've been through.
You missed 2 big conference calls today, one with corporate.
Oh, did you explain why?
No, I didn't mention that you cooked your foot.
Burn my foot, Pam. Please stop popping my cast.
Wrapped his foot in bubble wrap. That's pretty funny stuff. I think you can categorically say that's a very hilarious premise for a comedy show 20 years ago. I think you can say that. So I'm gonna drink a toast here. As I do, I'm gonna drink a double toast, honestly, because I never talked about Gene Hackman either. I didn't want to talk about that. That was just too sad. Just the way that we now know that he passed away. Just very Faulknerian, Gene Hackman's death. His wife passed away of hantavirus, which is something that you typically only get if you're like a hiker on the Appalachian Trail sleeping in a shelter, sharing it with mice and rats and things like that. But then, yeah, he just wandered around the house for like 9 days because his Alzheimer's was so bad he didn't really know what he was doing. And that was a tough one. I mean, that was a tough one, even now as I talk about it. So I'll drink to Gene Hackman, and I'll drink to George Foreman. Toast. That's a knockout. Knockout. Yeah. So, yeah, I had a Foreman grill. When I lived in my apartment in Tuscaloosa, I think I inherited it from my friend's ex-girlfriend, and they did not have a good breakup. So I knew it was mine. At that point, I knew I was never going to see her again. So yeah, I had this Foreman grill, and I remember I would come home every day from class. And I would usually go by like Target or something and get like something to throw on there. And between my classes, I would use the Foreman grill, and I would actually, because I had a balcony. It's the only apartment I've ever had with a balcony. I actually did take it out on the balcony and kind of cosplayed for a minute, being being a guy with a grill, I suppose. Pressing it down, draining the fat, reducing the fat, and yeah, getting just having like a nice little thing there, and never burning myself on it. I never burned myself on it. But those things, as I remember, maybe it's different. Maybe it was different for you. Maybe you were just more efficient. They were kind of a bitch to clean. I do remember that. Just it would take a while to clean. And you'd have to kind of clean it immediately, because if you didn't, like, all the gunk would kind of stick on. And after you eat like a delicious steak or something prepared on the George Foreman grill, cleaning is the last thing you'd want to do. So yeah, moving on. I do want to talk for just a few minutes, just a little bit, about the show that my wife and I have been watching on Sunday nights. Well, like, it comes on Sunday nights. We usually don't get around to it until like Tuesdays lately. But yeah, the third season of the White Lotus, which I talked about a few weeks ago on the show before it came on. I was excited that I had no idea that they had made a third season, and saw a promo for it like literally a few days before it started. And so I was excited. This is a show that I've watched every season of, the last 2 seasons, when they've come out. It was a show when it first came on. I had no idea what it was. But it instantly is like one of those things that just grabbed me. From the very beginning, because the first season, I believe, came on in 2021 or 2022. I can't remember, but it had a lot to do. It was very much a show that was conceived out of COVID, to play on people's ideas of like what they had been through during COVID. And as I said a couple weeks back, I had read a book about the history of HBO, and it led all the way up until 2022. And toward the end of that book, they interviewed Mike White, and the writer or director of that show, who who said that, during COVID, HBO had come to him and said, like, we're considering shows right now that we can film fast and cheap and be ready to go as soon as lockdown is over. And if you want to try pitching a show to us. So he pitched this show called The White Lotus, which each season, it's an anthology series. So each season has a different cast of characters in a different location. And the one thing that ties them all together, there are some characters that go between seasons, but the one thing that ties them all together is they all take place at this franchise of 5-star resorts called the White Lotus, right? And so obviously the name is very intentional. It's meant to evoke like the idea of the Lotus Eaters, which I've taught the Odyssey, but I can't say that I am like totally versed in the Odyssey, and I want to remember it right now, and not resort to farming out my memory to the Wikipedia. But that's not the point of this segment. The point of this segment is to talk to you about the White Lotus and why people are not saying that it's very good this season, which is interesting to me. But yeah, the Lotus is meant to evoke the idea of the Lotus Eaters, and this is from my memory here, is that Odysseus is on a 12-year journey home from Troy, right after the Peloponnesian Wars. Oh my gosh, I'm so bad at this. I can't remember. But he's home. He's on his way home, and like every stop along the way, he kind of gets his men killed. And so he's down to this point where like his men are lured, not by the sirens, that's another part of the story, but lured into this person's cave or something like that. That's not the Cyclops. That's another part of the story. And eat of the lotus flower, which turns them into lazy pigs. I think that's what goes on, right, in the Lotus Eaters. You're probably shouting at me right now from the future. I can't hear you. Our realities are not synchronized. I'm trying to get it that way. Okay. But, yeah, so, this is on Wikipedia. So it is from the Odyssey. Okay. Yeah. Odysseus, there's a picture here, like a little lithograph or something. Odysseus removing his men from the company of the Lotus Eaters. So, in Greek mythology, the Lothophagus, or the Lotus Eaters, were a race of people living on an island dominated by the lotus tree off coastal Tunisia. This race in the Odyssey are said to be eating the fruit of the lotus, which is sweet as honey. The lotus fruits and flowers were the primary food of the salad and were a narcotic, causing the inhabitants to sleep in peaceful apathy. After they ate the lotus, they would forget their home and loved ones and long only to stay with their fellow lotus eaters. Those who ate the plant never cared to report or return. Okay, so I did know all that. It's just been a while. I used to teach the Odyssey every year to high school freshmen. Of course, we wouldn't read the whole poem, the whole epic thing, but we would read parts of it, including the Lotus Eaters, and I've just completely forgotten about that altogether. I think maybe I ate the lotus flower. I think that's what, because the idea like of the lotus is that it stands in for something that keeps you from being productive, keeps you from really caring about the things that matter, like your home and your loved ones. So the lotus could stand in for anything, such as, for instance, alcohol, right? Which does make you forget about things sometimes. Yeah. So The White Lotus is a show that is all about people, generally rich people who can afford to travel. Like the first season of The White Lotus is people on the show talking very much about how hard COVID was. Even though now that it's over, they weren't stung really by it at all, right? They didn't lose their jobs. They didn't really miss a step. It was more or less a vacation to them, as some of us indeed treated COVID as a vacation, right? And I know that I even enjoyed it at times as well as a vacation for about 2 days. So And then I started losing money and I kind of started losing sleep, and I didn't like teaching from home. So you're watching the show and it's all about these people who are on vacation, but they're bringing themselves on vacation, right? Like when you go on vacation, you're sort of, you always say you want to escape, but really the person that you are travels with you. And in the absence of not having a regular schedule and not having this grounded identity to cling to, it can turn you into a restless, irritable, angry person, right? And so the White Lotus is a show that all 3 seasons are thematically tied together, by these people sort of trying to find a little bit of peace for themselves, but also not getting, like, when they eventually all find what they believe is peace, usually it turns into something that just like brings out the worst of who they are. And, like the really the core of their identities, that they usually just spend the rest of their lives kind of masking, right? If that makes any sense. And this 3rd season of the White Lotus is, surprising because the last 2 seasons have really been universally praised by everybody. But now that it's the 3rd season, it's starting to get, like with each successive week, people seem to be getting irritated at the show in ways that they never have before. And I really wasn't aware of this. I haven't been reading any reviews or anybody talking online about it until last week. I was just online and I saw somebody saying like that they were really annoyed by this season. They've officially checked out of it. I've checked out of the White Lotus, they said, right? And I read some more and I was like, wow, I guess people, because I wasn't aware. I thought I think the show's going really well, right? It's just this thing where you're watching a show and, you're really enjoying yourself. And then suddenly you're like, wow, people really don't seem to like this as much as I do. And you kind of have to start to have these doubts a little bit. Like, am I not paying attention? Is the show actually bad, or are my instincts incorrect? And you kind of start to question a little bit. So, I was sitting down with my wife tonight and I was asking her that question. Have you read any reviews of the show? And she said, like, I've seen some people not say very favorable things about it, but generally I think people like it. And I said, well, I've seen the opposite. I haven't seen a single person online really talking very favorably about this season of the White Lotus. And I told her that, like, I think last week I wouldn't have believed it. After this past week's episode, which is the 4th episode of the season, I think there's 8 episodes in total, I can kind of see why people are getting a little frustrated. And so we kind of started to talk through, things about the show. Like this last episode, if you haven't seen the show and you're still listening to me, I'll try to keep this as spoiler free as I possibly can, right? But definitely watch the White Lotus. If you haven't watched it at all, go and watch it from the 1st season. It's like a really compelling show, and just about rich people doing bad things. It is not, I wouldn't say, an eat the rich show, because I think we all, one of these shows where it's like just designed to make you hate the characters because they're rich and they're not like you. I think it's very much a show where it's like we watch it and we kind of have those preconceived biases toward them at the very beginning, but then of course we begin to really understand where they're coming from and we see bits of ourselves in them, regardless of how much money we have, right? So in the 3rd season of the White Lotus, in this episode that just aired this past week, it's like peak Lotus Eaters. Every season has this episode, and it's usually right there in the middle, where people are finally beginning to shed the identities of the real world, of the world that they've come from to get away from, ostensibly. And this week they partied and they got drunk and they got stoned, and much of the episode is really montages of them just kind of dancing around and zoning out and not really doing much. And, people seem to really not like that, in a way that they haven't in previous seasons, because they just are not really enjoying the idea of like watching a show where great actors they may be, they're just not really doing much, right? And I get the frustration, I do, but I also think about the whole point of the show, which is to, harken back to the idea of people shedding their identities and completely forgetting about who they are and where they came from and what they really love and appreciate and enjoy the most, and just falling into like a frolic of, right, just booze and self-destruction and apathy, and completely losing the quest to truly discover who they really are, which is the point of vacation, right? And so I do like that idea quite a lot. I did, like, after talking to my wife tonight, we kind of talked through some of the things that, the specific things that this week were sort of frustrating me when I was watching it, just like everybody else. So I'll talk about a couple of those things. So one of them is, again, if you haven't seen the show, I think you can still follow this, because the show it's a very smart show. And it is a show that is, masks a lot of its smartness, a lot of its deeper philosophical, I suppose, themes, within the, in the guise of like drama comedy, I suppose. So there is a character on this season of the White Lotus named Rick, and he's played by Walton Goggins, which really, really messes me up, because right after we watch the White Lotus, we watch The Righteous Gemstones, which is a comedy show. It's a straight up comedy show that he's on, playing a bombastic, 70-year-old preacher who peaked as a child preacher at 13. And now he's like trading on that fame from, 60 years earlier, named Uncle Baby Billy. Okay. And so it really confuses me, because he's on the White Lotus playing a very dramatic character, and then on the Righteous Gemstones playing an over the top character for comedy. But on the White Lotus, his character's name is Rick, and he's just a very angry guy on that show. And when you first meet him on the show, he's come to the White Lotus with his girlfriend, and she's very happy and perky and consistently stands by him, even though he's a piece of shit to hang around. And he's just angry for some reason, but you get the idea that he's not really there at the White Lotus to relax like everybody else, to actually have a vacation. He's there seeking something or someone to try and complete some kind of a mission that he's come there to complete. And you find out what that mission is on the third episode, which is why I was really surprised that people started talking about on the third episode like there's nothing that's going on in this season. It's like, what are you talking about? He just revealed like a big thing, and it sort of turns the tables on what you thought about his character. But in the fourth season, he leaves the White Lotus completely. In the fourth episode, I'm sorry. He leaves the hotel completely, and he goes to Bangkok. So they're in Thailand. And he goes to Bangkok to find this person that, will be the objective of his mission, right? But before he finds that person, he meets up with an old friend of his from the United States. This friend of his is played by Sam Rockwell. And he basically just goes to a bar with him and spends the entire episode. Every time it cuts back to Rick, he's just sitting in a bar there with Sam Rockwell, and they're talking. And they're talking and talking and talking. And Rick isn't really saying anything. He's just listening. And so other than him being in Bangkok, there's nothing that really happens to him on this last week's episode. And so I could see why people would get disappointed. And I was watching the show kind of getting disappointed as well. And so I asked my wife, it's like, what do you make of that? And she gave what I thought was a really good answer. And I have to give her credit here, because it's like her interpretations are, honestly, it's like I'm the one who's supposed to be really kind of doing this for a living, because I did get a master's in English literature, and I do a lot of interpretations of literature. Right. But she schooled me on this one, really, because the thing that Sam Rockwell is saying in these scenes is interesting. There's this, theme of like Buddhism, like people are coming to Thailand and getting religion through Buddhism. which is an Eastern religion and one that I have to admit I'm not very familiar with, right? I know there's a lot of meditation involved. I know there's monks, okay? but I do know that this idea of like Buddhism is about, like sacrificing your identity, kind of giving it up to sort of understand your role in like the bigger, broader spans of the universe, right? And being more connected, which is like what all spirituality seeks to do. But a lot of spirituality, especially a lot of Western religions, are more focused on, the community and like yourself and your own self-improvement and how you kind of give yourself to the community. And I suppose there's some of that in Buddhism too. But what Sam Rockwell is saying as a friend to Rick's to Rick is he came to Thailand to get away from the United States. He had done something illegal and he came to Thailand and he started going on just this endless stream of sex and drugs. And for days and days and days, which turned into a couple of years, got to this point where he was so tired of just having sex with the women, the prostitutes he was picking up, that he would then transition. He would start having sex with men. And then suddenly he would like, feel like he was not the man in the relationship, that he actually wanted to be the Asian woman that he had initially begun having sex with. And so it goes into these like, he goes into these places of depravity and perversion and self-destruction, only to sort of discover that like what he was ultimately trying to do through all of these sexcapades was divorce himself from himself, to see himself, to transcend and see himself as other people see him, right? And then at that point he got into Buddhism because he realized that this was a religion that I could kind of do that through without having to resort myself to all of this depravity and all of this self-destruction. And so what's interesting about that is that you are watching just all of these countless reaction shots of the Rick character listen to his friend just dump all this on him as they're sitting in this like this bar in Bangkok. And what you're meant to do there is put yourself, almost transcend yourself and like, put yourself in like Rick's skin. This is a guy who the whole season has been struggling with this thing that happened to him many, many years earlier, this baggage that he's still carrying around, that he can't transcend, that he can't get out of. And so he's sitting there with his friend who has met up with him to give him an object that he will use in accomplishing his mission. And his friend, as he gives him that object, is telling him this sort of message of Buddhism, of actually trying to like think outside yourself and think about how you belong in the wider span of the universe, and how, you're really just kind of a part of that rather than like you acting on the universe is really acting on you. Right. So I don't know. It was interesting. So when I think about that, it's like, okay, this is not that makes sense. This episode that people are kind of dumping on is not so much really bad. It's not just like these meandering scenes of weird monologues that don't really add up to much. It really is tying together all of the things that the show has been talking about this entire season. So if that makes any sense, I don't know if I'm explaining it very well. If you've seen the show, maybe I am, I don't know. Or if you've seen the show, you may disagree with me in my interpretation, but remember, it's really my wife's interpretation. So you can beat her up if you want to. So the other really important scene is there's guests. There's another group of guests at the White Lotus in season 3, which are like this vacationing family from North Carolina. And this typical, like, you think about the Murdoch family, that guy who killed his family. Or do you just think about these like, traditional, like, I went to Duke, my wife went to Duke, we met each other at Duke, we had kids, now our kids go to Duke, right? That's this kind of family, right? So in this last week's episode of the show, their two sons, the family, the parents are played by Parker Posey, and Jason Isaacs. And they've got a daughter and two sons, and the two sons are off on a yacht for the night. So that just leaves, the parents and the daughter. The daughter's named Piper. And Piper is the reason that they're all vacationing in Thailand, because she is finishing up her graduate thesis on Buddhism. And she's come there ostensibly to interview a monk and collect research. But on this last week's season, she tells her parents that what she's really come there for is to actually join this monastery so that she could be there and she can meditate full time and everything. And of course, her parents are not favorable to this. Like, the mom, played by Parker Posey, definitely doesn't like it. And she says, "You're not going to be a Buddhist. You're going to be a Christian like me. I'm a Christian," And Jason Isaacs, the father, is just totally checked out of it because he's got his own thing going on, right? Jason Isaacs is there and he's constantly getting these phone calls that reveal that he has not just lost through a bad business deal his business and all of his money, but he's also probably about to go to jail. Okay. So he's a guy who has, while everybody else is coming to Thailand to shed their identities, he has literally lost his identity, everything that makes him who he is. At least materially, at least on paper, right? Like this titan of business. And these things that, like, his kids and his wife attach to him as his identity. Like, every time Parker Posey talks to him and is proud of him and heaps praise on him, she always says it in the form of "You've been so successful. Everything you've ever done in business has worked." She never really says exactly that, you're a great family man or whatever. It's always about the business. It's always about the material. So this is a guy who his entire life has been built up. His entire ego has been built on a foundation of, being a successful businessman. And now all that has completely gone away. So even though this entire episode of the White Lotus, every time it cuts to this family with Piper telling her parents what she wants to do, and it cuts to Jason Isaacs, it's this thing where it's like Piper is this girl who sort of wants to come to Tibet to get rid of everything that she is bringing from the United States to become a new person. And meanwhile, we're actually watching her father go through that transition himself. And so that's an interesting dynamic. It's interesting that he would be against this, but he can't be against it because he's lost the facilities to really express his opinion, to express his mind, because it's like, he's going through that stage of emptiness that you go through in Buddhism, right? Just emptying yourself out, all your pretensions, who you are, your material identity, right? And Parker Posey, there's also an interesting dynamic going on with her because she also is emptying herself out because she's addicted to pharmaceuticals, specifically lorazepam. You should do a drinking game, honestly. Every time she says lorazepam in the show, right? But the show does make that comment that we have these forms of spirituality in America, and it's not Christianity, and it's certainly not Buddhism. It's pharmaceuticals, right? And it's, again, these lotus-like objects that allow us to divorce ourselves from motivation, from doing things that are really important. Okay. So yeah, even though last week's episode seemed meandering, now that I think about it, and after talking it out a little bit, I think this is probably one of the strongest episodes of the season of the show that I've seen. Right. And not bad. And, again, I always get really confused. I genuinely get very confused when, people are watching a television show and they're judging it before the show has ended. Right. I think it's okay to judge a show based on its individual episodes, but I also think don't check out of the show before it's finished, right? If you don't want to watch the show anymore, that's totally fine. But I also think it's like, maybe just, don't tell people what you think about it, right? Because then they're going to check out of it, whereas they might actually get something out of it. I don't know. It's unethical, but maybe I'm being a little bit too hard. I don't know. So, yeah, if you're still with me, thank you for joining again tonight on the show. Yeah, should I change my name? I don't know. I don't know. I feel like it wouldn't even really be a name change. It would just sort of be a start over. I don't know. I don't know if you feel the same way. I feel really like Rip Van Winkled these days. Like, Rip Van Winkle, that short story by Washington Irving, where the guy falls asleep. I think it's like during the Revolutionary War. He falls asleep. He sits by a tree and he falls asleep. And he wakes up like 20 years later or something, and he wakes up and, like America's a completely different country and the soldiers are gone, and now it's like George Washington. I don't know. I can't remember Rip Van Winkle very much. I know some of his other stories, but yeah, the idea though that, you go to sleep and you just don't recognize your country anymore. You don't recognize anywhere. And, obviously it's a fantasy, it's a fable, but it is somewhat of a metaphor, I suppose, right? For what happens when you get older, or just what happens when you go to sleep and you wake up and like your leaders are finding a new way to screw you and suddenly changing everything over. That's what it sort of feels like these days. I don't know if you feel the same way, but I don't want to get into that, but I just genuinely am very confused these days about what's happening. Right. I was driving around the other day. I'll give you an example. I was driving around the other day and, I saw somebody driving a Cybertruck. These are electric cars. They're the ugliest things on the road. They look like something that RoboCop would drive, honestly. I don't know. Matches his outfit. But, somebody driving a Cybertruck, an electric car, and they had a bumper sticker that said, "Don't tread on me." Right? It had that coiled snake, "Don't tread on me." These are the things that rednecks usually slap on their diesel gas guzzling, trucks. They would never have ever been caught driving an electric car maybe 6 months ago. But now that, Elon Musk is like this embattled political figure of the left, of the right, excuse me. People are sympathetic to him and buying his cars. And I don't know. I mean, listen, if this is what it gets to take people to save the environment a little bit, maybe, but I don't know. I mean, those Teslas, those electric cars, I don't believe, cause they mine, they have like those lithium ion batteries. So they're proving that really there's no good environmentally friendly way to drive a car, I suppose, in this world. It doesn't really exist anymore, right? Does it? Yeah, I don't know sometimes about what's going on right now, the world that we're living in. It's changing every day, it seems like. Just, rednecks driving electric cars. It's very bizarre. Thank you so much for joining me here tonight on the Midnight Citizen Show. The world will be different next week, which is kind of good because I'll have new things to talk about. I think I talked about everything I care about tonight. George Foreman, the White Lotus, and the Shaggy DA. I want to remind you can join me and watch this show, watch the video, as well as listen to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Music. My home base where I'm doing everything right now is over at mikesbonfire.substack.com. I also simultaneously post this podcast on YouTube at youtube.com/the_Midnight Citizen Podcast. And also post the video as well over there. So you can see the video tonight's show. I also upload the video to Spotify so you can watch me doing the show on Spotify if that's your app of choice. If that's your app of poison, it'd be over there, right? So yeah. Yeah. Until next time, don't tread on me. Keep your eyes open.